Love this question. This is something that my wife and I recently went through. So this person asks, how did you save for your wedding? My boyfriend and I have agreed that we'd like to get married in spring of 2026, if all goes according to plan. No official proposal yet, but since we are big on future planning, I know it's coming some point this year. We've been talking a lot about budgeting and saving for that big day, and it's seriously stressing us both out. We live in a very expensive area, and I definitely want a nice wedding, but I'm already starting to feel like I'm going to have to make compromises on some things, even considered cutting down the potential guest list count from 100 down to 50. We are expecting to pay for everything ourselves, but I do think we have some generous friends and family who might help, but I don't want to expect or assume that. So how did you all save? We have some money in our savings, but that's our emergency fund. We're trying hard to cut back on eating out / going out, etc. But honestly, saving for a big wedding and honeymoon, which we want to go on immediately after to Italy, sounds overwhelming, even if it's in 2 years. And I don't know if we need to be more intense about saving.
Yeah, you probably do need to be more intense about saving. But yeah, so I definitely, I got married back in 2021. So I think I still have my wedding spreadsheet that my husband and I put together. But, I understand wanting a nice wedding, but it's good for you to start looking at the numbers. I think when you first, you want to get engaged, you start thinking about this stuff, you think about everything you want. But until you start looking at the numbers and see what this stuff really costs, I think that's whenever, the bigger picture comes in. But, get the numbers for your area. What do venues look like? How much is food? What about an open bar? Like photographers and DJs? It's going to depend on your area. And she said they live in an expensive area. So get a realistic view of what this looks like. Let's say in your area, it's $50K. Is that reasonable to you? Is that something that you can save for? I don't know what your incomes are. I don't know what you're thinking as far as that goes. Right. And then maybe from there, decide what you don't want to compromise on and then what you think you could live with. If you do want to scale back to 50 people, but still have a really nice wedding venue and stuff, maybe you do that. Food is one of the most expensive things on there. So if you have less mouths to feed, maybe that's best for you. Now, once you both decide on what you want for your big day, do the math. And then I'd say add at least 10 to 15% to that because you're never going to hit it on target. We definitely went over on ours as well. And then what is that number? And then calculate it backwards to see how much you'll be able to save. You're not just going to, not go out to eat maybe once a week or something. You're going to have to be very intentional about saving money for this. So for easy math, I just said, let's say they want to save $40K for the honeymoon and the wedding, right? And I'm going, like they said, I am not going to anticipate any money from friends or family unless you have had the conversation with your parents. I'm not talking to friends about this. Unless you've had, the conversation with your parents and they are saying, I'm going to give you 10K. We're going to give you 10K, right? The 40,000 that you're going to save, that means you're going to have to save about $1,600 a month for 2 years to make that happen. So it's going to have to be pretty intentional. Cutting things out of your budget isn't going to be the end all be all that's going to save you, but I think it can definitely help. You really have to decide what you want and how much you're willing to put towards that. And how much you're able to put towards that. So I hope that helps, figure out the numbers, but I don't know, Nick, what do you think? How should you save for something like this?
Yeah, I think planning and saving for a wedding is the first true financial test for a soon to be married couple. And it's the first test where you can really see, are we aligned on our financial views, our goals for money, our beliefs around money. Yeah. And I know for my wife and I, we were very aligned when it came to saving for the wedding and what we thought of other people giving us money for it. We were both very much of the belief that hey, we don't want to take on two things we said. We don't want to take on any debt and we don't want to expect anyone else to help us. Yeah. And it even came to a point where we were okay, can we do this ourselves? And then instead of kind of just, openly accepting money from, family or relatives, we were hey, if you really want to help out, can you buy this specific thing? So they're on the one end, exactly how much you're contributing. And we also know that we're not taking advantage of the situation, I guess. Right. But yeah, I think when it comes to saving, weddings are one of those industries where everything is marked up. And like you said, food, drinks, caterers, even just rentals for chairs and stuff. All of that stuff is extremely marked up. And I think what you got to do is just identify between the both of you, like what are the most important things? Like what are our non-negotiables for this wedding? And maybe that's like a DJ, maybe that's the guest list or the suit and the dress or the cake or the venue, whatever it is, like the type of food. Identify what are like your top like 2 or 3 non-negotiables. And then I think you got to be okay with having some flexibility on the other stuff. You know, like if you know, cool, I really want to have it at this place and I want to have it with this amount of people. Awesome. Those are my 2 non-negotiables. And so I can be okay with if instead of a cake, we do like cupcakes. And it's like, you know, a fun thing. Like for our wedding, we literally did a small cake just for us to cut. And then we did donuts for everyone else and people loved it. And we did a taquero, which was awesome because like that's something that we really enjoyed. Like for us, we found ways to cut back on costs and still do it in a way that we thought was unique and fun. And so I think if they can identify those two or three things that are really important and give themselves flexibility on the rest, like I think that's one way to actually start to reel back in the budget.
Yeah. And I'm just curious if like, you know, this person doesn't say, but you know, I wonder what they think is like a lot of money. Like, are they okay with saving $1,600 a month? Or, you know, I'm not sure what they make or what they thought, but you know, it just seemed like they're like, oh, well, you know, I'm just gonna have to cut some things out here and there. It's like, no, you need to be really, really intentional about how you're going to be saving for this, because that's a huge expense, you know, especially in 2 years. And we didn't even talk about the ring or anything. So hopefully, you know, he has money for that. But something they mentioned that I don't think we touched on yet, please don't touch your emergency fund. Like that is so separate. And that's maybe what they were thinking, like, oh, we have some money set aside. That's not what you're using that for. Because the minute you use that for something, an emergency is going to come up and then you're going to end up in credit card debt. So I really don't want to see you doing that.
Yeah, I feel like so many people approach like whether it's the wedding or any other savings goal, like I feel like they approach it a little backwards. They look at the thing that they want, they say, how much is that going to cost? And then they say, cool, how do I make that work into my budget? And I think you kind of got to go the other way around. Like you got to look at your budget, look at your numbers. Like, do I have an emergency fund? If not, like, can I save for that? Am I saving for retirement, right? Like, is the rest of my financial life in order? And then what does that leave extra? And like, yes, you can make sacrifices on some things as long as like you're aware of what the sacrifices are, the consequences of it. Like that's okay. And then once you have like a monthly average savings rate, then we can project that into the future. Cool. I got 2 years to save. Now I know what my budget is for it. Instead of doing it backwards, where you're kind of forced to either rely on other people, like especially in this case, if the goal is for your parents not to help out. Well, now you might put yourselves in a situation where you have to have your parents help out, or you take on credit card debt, or you pull from the emergency fund, things that I've seen like all too often when it comes to weddings. Don't work it backwards. Instead, like work it with real numbers like we did in the last situation. Like figure out what can you actually save? How much time do you have? There's your budget for a wedding or really any other large expense.
Yeah. And it might even be worth, you know, if you have a close relationship with your families, like it might be worth saying, hey, if, you know, just like a nice conversation, like if you were going to, you know, give something, please let me know, because we're starting to, you know, project out numbers and stuff for our wedding so that we can, you know how much we need to be saving. So that way you actually know, because, you know, if your parents are planning to give you some, then this would obviously cut down your number of what you need to be saving every month. But
yeah. And, you know, even on the other side of that, like they said, like they don't want to expect anyone to help them. Yeah. And, you know, that was one thing that me and my wife talked about, is not expecting our parents to help. And so we like both went to our parents individually and we're like, look, like this is what we're doing. We're really excited about it. We've been saving for it since before we got engaged, because we knew that was coming. We just, it wasn't until it happened that we kind of told our families about it. And then we went to our families and we said, hey, like, we're not expecting you to contribute anything for it. And we don't need you to, we don't necessarily want you to. And I do think like that hurt my mom a little bit. She was like, well, you know, we wanted to buy these things. And so, you know, me and my wife were like, cool, what things are we cool with my parents buying and your parents buying that are reasonable, that we're, you know, we understand, like, all right, maybe her mom buying the dress, it's probably like a thing that she wants to do. And then my mom really wanted to get the cake for the wedding and my tux. And so things like that, where it was a little bit more reasonable, but we had also kind of set our boundaries with our family, because that's another big part about the wedding planning process is most of the time boundaries just get thrown out the door.
Yeah, I hear that all too often. Now for us, I think it's fun to talk about our own numbers. We got married in the middle of like COVID.
Nice.
So there was a few things that we wanted to make sure that we had. So our wedding venue, we wanted it to be outside. Because at the time, remember, do you remember back then whenever like you could have like more,
you like couldn't be inside.
Yeah, exactly. So, I think total our wedding was like $23,000. But again, we had a few things we wanted. We wanted to have it outside. We wanted to have it attached to a hotel because, you know, my husband's family was coming in from out of town and we wanted the easy access. We didn't want people to have to like Uber everywhere, you know, so we wanted them to go from the airport to the hotel and they would be right at the venue. Right. And we also wanted a live band. So that's what we sort of spent our money on.
Yeah.
But we almost didn't, not that we didn't have a choice, but like, you know, we had to pick an outdoor venue because at that time it was like limited. So we had to like cut our numbers a little bit to stay within those guidelines for our wedding. But yeah, you know, there were some things we cut out. I didn't have a bridal party or anything. So it saved a lot of money there and obviously a lot of drama. So eliminated that. But yeah, that's what we really did. Like looked at what we wanted. We knew we would not want to compromise on, and then just kind of, you know, like you did, we just had like a small cake and then we did a cookie table, which is very popular for the Pittsburgh area where we got married.
Nice.
It's just like a whole table of cookies and then you get like bags and they can take them with them and stuff. So that was fun.
Yeah, I mean, I have like no shame for how like, you know, quote unquote cheap we went with our wedding. Like the ceremony venue, like it was an awesome venue and it happened to be free if you had it with less than 20, it was like 25 people max. And so we did the ceremony very like personal, just our two families and grandparents. And then the actual party, we had like 70 people, I want to say, which was a good size for us. But like I said, we got like donuts. We had a taco guy there. Like we were our own DJs, which was actually kind of fun because people came up to the iPad and like put the next song up. And so it was kind of fun. But when I tell people that like, oh yeah, we spent like 20 grand and that was the whole like start to finish, like wedding, the ceremony, everything. That was also the honeymoon and our dress and tux and her rings or her ring and my ring. Like some people are like, oh man, you cheaped out on the ring, huh? And I'm like, I have no shame about it. Like we both agreed that why are we going to spend 40 grand on a wedding when that could go to the down payment on our house or that, you know, like we both just felt like that amount was silly for us. And like, if that's, you know, if you want to spend that amount, like no shame to you, right? Like as long as you're taking care of the other expenses in your life, the other financial things in your life, I don't think there's a problem with it. It just for us felt like way too much money to spend.
Yeah. I know people that spend more on the ring than my wedding and and my husband's ring all combined together. But anyway, we're off topic now, but
yeah, let's move into the next one.
The information, opinions, and recommendations provided on this podcast are for entertainment purposes only and do not constitute professional financial advice. Any financial decisions you make based on the content of this podcast are your responsibility. We strongly recommend consulting with a licensed financial advisor or other qualified professional before making any significant financial decisions. By listening to this podcast, you acknowledge that we are not liable for any financial outcomes.